Wow, you know what it's been? It's been a long time. There's been a lot that's happened since the last time we spoke, since the last time we communicated over YouTube, and I wish I could explain it all in one video, because there's a lot having to do with where I've been for the past, I think the last video I put out was 3 months ago with Jeremy, and even then before that, there's been just like a really huge inconsistency with the videos that I put out, and a lot of that has to do with a lot of inconsistency that's been happening in my life, and honestly me fighting for just the fact that trying to make sure that I was okay. And there's a lot that's changed, and there's a lot that I've learned through this entire process. I don't want to post about it in this video or talk through everything in this video because I really want to address what's happening in the world right now and how we can handle it in the eating disorder recovery community. But I wanted you to know, just this is the first video I put out in a long time. I want you to know I am back. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to relay everything that I've been learning and also to jump back into addressing the eating disorder recovery community. If you're brand new, if you want to be a part of the eating disorder recovery mental health community, consider subscribing. I'd love to have you be a part of the CAM fam. Let's jump right into it. Handling coronavirus, this crazy period of time with an eating disorder. This topic is huge and it's very important because I have the feeling, just putting myself in your guys' shoes, I had the feeling that this period of time would be kind of a make or break scenario for a lot of people. I truly believe that this period of time right now is more important than ever to push for recovery, to push for mental health, to find ourselves. Yes, there is a lot of crazy and honestly terrifying things that are going on in the world, but I have this strong feeling that now there is this window of opportunity for us to press into recovery and to push harder than we've ever pushed before. It's going to be difficult, but my hope with this video is that I can relay some sort of information and some tips that will help boost your recovery like crazy. First, let's address what's going to potentially make this season so difficult. Why? Because it's really important to address these difficulties that might pop up so that we can actively see them as they might be happening, but also understand how to address those. So what are some of the ways that could make this upcoming season difficult? Number one, the first big one that came to my mind was the breaking up of a routine. So I know my past eating disorder self really relied heavily on a routine to keep myself active along the path of recovery. Eating disorders like routine, and humans like routine as well. It's just an aspect of being human. The breaking up of our consistency and of our routine can honestly put us in a really rough spot with eating disorders, but also mentally. Number two is isolation. Everything that's happening right now is kind of segmenting everyone, right? I would say collectively as a world, we haven't necessarily experienced this level of isolation, of necessary isolation that we're experiencing now. And of course, this isolation is to encourage us to push past this sickness that's spreading, but in the middle of an eating disorder, being so separated like this can honestly put us all in a really rough spot and make recovery much more difficult. Fear and anxiety is huge. Of course, with everything that's going on in the world right now, there's just a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety on what's happening now and what's going to happen in the future. And for us, it's really easy, I think, for people with an eating disorder and just people in general, but more so specifically people with an eating disorder, to take on that fear and to take on that anxiety and to have it affect our day-to-day and our mentality. And so that's a huge hurdle we're gonna have to push through. Another big issue that I would have gone through myself, and I know a lot of people are going through right now, is being stuck literally physically in an environment that is not conducive to recovery. So I know that, for example, a lot of college, university students might be going home, and I know that displacement of going home, maybe where an eating disorder developed, is really, really difficult. And also flat out just being stuck in an environment is not conducive to healthy mentality and recovery at all. So those are a lot of the hurdles that we are going to have to push up against and push through. But there are some things that we can do to mitigate those and to push harder and deeper into recovery. The biggest most wide-reaching piece of advice that I can give when thinking about what we're stepping into with coronavirus and eating disorder recovery is to fight for internal peace in the midst of external chaos. That is the most broad, wide-reaching, blanketed piece of advice that I can give during this time. Our goal collectively, my goal for this period of time is to fight for internal peace in the middle of external chaos. External chaos being everything that's going on in the world right now with coronavirus, with whatever each of us are personally brushing up against. There's a lot of chaos that's going on right now. The goal with all of these tips that I'm about to give you is to find internal peace in the middle of all of that chaos. All right, so let's talk about some specific things that we can do as an eating disorder community to step into that. First things first, let's talk about specifically what I think we should do with food. Number one, the biggest piece of advice that I can give with food is to regularly consult with your nutritionist or your physician, whoever is guiding you. If you have someone who's guiding you through what to eat and how much to eat, consistently sticking with them, making appointments with them is more crucial now than it might ever be. And if you don't have someone who you're working with that's like a nutritionist, now might be the time to start looking for somebody. Outside of that though, I think one of the biggest things that your eating disorder might try to get you to do is to change your eating habits based on the changes that's happening in your schedule and in your life right now. So your eating disorder might try to convince you that because circumstances are changing, that you should change the amount that you eat or what you eat. And your goal here is to fight against that. I was just talking with someone on Instagram the other day, and she was asking me whether she should change the amount that she's eating right now or what she's eating because of the change in schedule, right? Of being more inside, of staying more inside. My answer was no. The honest, like the biggest thing here, depending on which eating disorder you're working with, of course, is to stick with the goals that you've set up for yourself having to do with that eating disorder. So for example, you're working through anorexia, then the goal right now should be at a minimum to at least maintain, right? That's the baseline, that's a minimum. So whatever you need to do to stick to your goals, that goal is still live and it's still active, and it's more important now than it ever will be. The big piece of advice here is honestly to create a list of triggers for yourself during this specific time. Okay, so I know a lot of people watching this may have developed lists like this before, some may have not, but the idea here is that your circumstances have changed. Your external circumstances has changed. So where you live, where you go during the day, depending on if you're quarantined or not, there's a lot here that has changed, and so I think this warrants the creation of a new trigger list in my mind. So you're gonna have to be really brutally honest with yourself during this period of time. What under these new world quarantined coronavirus circumstances could I see myself getting triggered into falling into bad habits again? And then coming up with creative ways to address those. For example, let's go back to the example of going from college to back into your home where maybe you developed your eating disorder. So maybe a part of the plan of just relieving some of that stress is getting out of the house as much as you can while still practicing social distancing, like taking walks throughout your day. I'm gonna address more creative ideas throughout this video, but like the main thing with this first point is to create a specific coronavirus world trigger list and creative ways to address each of those triggers. Second big piece of advice here is to do a social media purge. Now, I'm not going to tell you to unfollow literally every single person that you're following right now on Instagram, on TikTok, YouTube, whatever. But now is more important than ever to have those positive voices surrounding you on social media. Why is that important? Because some of the only voices that we're taking in right now are coming through our phone, are coming through our computer, our TV, etc. And because these are some of the only voices coming in, it makes them that much more important because those voices are going to influence your perspective and your thoughts. So the question that I want you to ask yourself is, are the people that I'm following helping me or are they hurting me? Do I leave seeing their post or their story feeling better about myself or more anxious? If you get anxious watching this video, if you feel worse watching my content, I hope you don't, but I would rather have you not necessarily watch it if it's negatively impacting your life. Of course, I want this content to be positively impacting your life. The recommendation here is to go through your following list. It's to go through whoever you're following on all of your social media accounts and maybe to make some tough decisions. For example, I stopped following bodybuilders on Instagram. I don't really look at Instagram too much anymore, but I stopped following bodybuilders because I always found myself comparing myself to where they were at and where I was, and I always left that comparison feeling worse about myself. So I chose to follow or unfollow most bodybuilders because they weren't putting out really positive messages centered around how they think and mentality, things like that. So be really critical of your Instagram following list, of your TikTok following list. Ask yourself if those voices are positive or if they're negative. And at the end of it all, maybe just for the time being, start unfollowing some of those negative voices. So that suggestion was to maybe do a little bit of a social media purge. This next one is to spend less time on social media. So during this time, it's going to be really, really easy. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be really easy to just be on social media all day, every day, because we're all quarantined, we're all isolated, and I'm not telling you to not look at social media at all because I think that it can be a really positive influence, especially since we're all, or a lot of people are quarantined right now. So it can be a way to access other people. The suggestion here, though, is to simply spend a little bit less time on social media throughout your day. What I honestly do, I literally do this for myself right now. I set app limits for myself. Maybe that's kind of lame. I don't think it is. So I have a certain hour limit that I can spend on social media every single day, and that helps me almost budget my time and my mentality a little bit better than just leaving it all wide open. So I now am more intentional with how I'm spending time on social media in regards to before, when it was all just an open window and an open door. And if you're feeling bored from that time that you would be spending on social media, you can use that time and energy to tap into other things like discovering your other interests or doing things that you've wanted to do for a long time, like drawing or making music or writing a book, any of those things. Next big tip, I've said this before, but it's more applicable now than ever, is to give yourself grace through this period of time. So collectively, as a world, we've never really experienced what we're experiencing now. And a lot of schedules and lives have been really extremely displaced. And I think it's going to be easy for ourselves, myself included, to beat ourselves up through this process, feeling like, oh, we should have this down, or just feeling down because of these mixed up schedules and this mixed up life. If your internal voice starts to beat yourself up for being alone or isolated, just remember this. What's going on right now is a life-changing experience for a majority of the world. This is a big thing that's happening right now, and it's okay not to have it all together. It's going to take time to adjust, and that's okay. The goal for me with this video is not to completely remove this adjustment period between what life was like before and what life is like now with everything Corona going on in the world. The goal is to make that transition a little bit easier. Bottom line, it's going to take time to adjust to this new period of time, and that's okay. Next one is a big one. It's getting that internal voice out in the open. I've found that for myself, if life is a little stressful and a little rough, even just a little bit, and one of the only voices that I am taking in or using for my perspective comes from my internal voice, I've found that that can put me in a little rough of a spot. In other words, if it's just me talking to myself in my brain and not externalizing in some way, and I would say both an internal and an external processor, but if left to my own devices, if my internal voice is left to itself, no one else to run perspective by, then I usually find myself in a more troubling spot. And so the goal here is to, put a simple way, I guess, express yourself, to get that voice out. And there are a couple ways that maybe you could do that. One of the first ways you could do that is through journaling. And not journaling with the goal of achieving something, but journaling just from the perspective of writing down day after day how you feel, what you felt that day. FaceTime with friends, text your friends, message random strangers on the internet a message of positivity and encouragement. Make a video diary talking through how you feel and what you're experiencing right now. Those are just a couple ideas, but the main point here is to come up with ways that you can get that internal voice out into the open, whether it be for yourself through something like journaling or with other people through something like FaceTime or House Party. The House Party app is pretty cool too. The next big tip is to move. And no, I'm not talking about moving to another place to live. I'm talking about moving your body. I'm also not talking about just exercising, because I know a lot of people here maybe are in a rough spot when it comes to exercising, at least for right now. I'm simply talking about getting up and moving your body a little bit each day. In my opinion, 3 of the best things you can do right now for your mental health and for your physical health are yoga, taking short walks outside, and hiking in nature. Again, remember, the goal here is not exercise. It's not to move to make yourself more hungry. It's not to move to burn more calories. The goal here is to establish a positive relationship with movement and with your mentality and your body. The goal here is to clear your mind, take a breath, and focus on how you are doing. So this is a full story for another time. In college, I broke my collarbone. And at that point in time, I'd been lifting a lot, but when I broke my collarbone, I literally could not do any exercise. Couldn't even do like stair stepper, couldn't do elliptical for probably 4 months straight. Couldn't do anything. It was the most painful injury I've ever had. But what was more difficult than the injury was the fact that I couldn't really do anything physical that I love to do to clear my head, other than taking walks outside. And you know what really helped me during that period of time? Taking walks outside. Bottom line, all we can do is our best, and sometimes all we can do is to take walks outside. And that simple action of getting up, getting outside a little bit, and taking walks can clear your head and clear your mentality more than even working out, to be honest. Another big recommendation I'd have during this period of time is to actually write out what your big goals are for this period of isolation, however long it might last, however long coronavirus might last, what your big goals are for this period of time. I found for myself in eating disorders and outside of eating disorders, if I don't set big goals, if I don't know exactly what I'm working towards, then it's difficult to know what I'm doing, or it's difficult to be motivated to do anything. It's the difference between having no directions and trying to find a destination or a location than having directions to get you to that destination. So is it maintenance right now? Is it pushing towards a certain weight goal? Is it pushing yourself to actually, during this time, eat more than you thought you would? Is it adding something to your oatmeal every day? I don't exactly know what it is, but what are your big goals? How can you make the most of this period of time, however long it might be? Writing out what I want to get out of a season like this helps me stay focused and stay centered in on moving forward. Another one here is to make a small list every single day of a couple things you want to do that day, of a couple things you want to accomplish that day. And this can coincide with your big goals list, right? So you have a couple big goals that you're working towards. Maybe it's maintenance, maybe it's gaining a certain amount of weight, maybe it's reaching a certain weight goal. Whatever it would be, you have those big goals, but this tip is to write a couple small goals every day that help you get closer to those big goals, but also just small things that you enjoy doing every single day. It could be drawing. It could be, today I'm just gonna draw. No goal to reach, but I'm just gonna draw today. That's it. It could be simple as that. Something like 3 things a day, just like a small list of 3 things every single day, things that you want to accomplish that day. This last one is a little more broad, but it's also just as important. It's to set yourself up for success in this period of time, to simply think about food a little bit less. And I know maybe that seems backwards when it comes to setting up these trigger lists, or these different tips to address an eating disorder. But the goal is to set yourself up for success, but to be less focused on food day to day. Bottom line, this period of time has the potential to be a little rough. It has the potential to keep us isolated for longer than I would like, and longer than I would like for you. And because of that, there is potential for us to just get so zoned in and lost on food, on worry, on anxiety, on doubt, all these things that don't serve us, all these things that tear us down rather than build us up. I think one of the biggest goals that you could have during this period of time is to try and fight to find that dance between being intentional with recovery and not focusing on food. It's possible to do, trust me, it is. And I know maybe that sounds like a foreign language that I'm speaking, saying that it is possible or what that is. And one of the best ways to do that is simply doing things that bring you happiness and joy outside of food specifically. This period of time is a period of time for you to discover yourself. It's a new period of discovery and innovation for you. There is chaos going on in our world today, but internally this is your opportunity to really dig into what it means to be yourself and to love yourself. If it's dancing on TikTok, it's dancing on TikTok. If it's streaming on Twitch, it's streaming on Twitch. If it's doing something, anything that you've been wanting to try for a long time, then that's what it is. I have a friend who who's trying to figure out what he should do with this period of time, and he's passionate about making cocktails. He loves watching cocktail channels on YouTube. And so my advice to him was to just find a cocktail making course on Skillshare or Udemy and to learn how to make some ballin' cocktails. Whatever it is, whatever excites you the most during this period of time, I would so encourage you to make a list of those things and to make a plan to do them. Whether it's every single day or not, maybe some of you like lists more than others, but simply to brainstorm with a couple ideas that bring you life more than anything right now that doesn't have to do with food or eating disorders. This period of time has the potential to be a little rough, and it already is for the world around us. But there is also real opportunity right now to press into ourselves more. I am pressing into myself more now than I ever have before. Put in another way, I feel like there are a lot of distractions that have been put on hold. And yes, there's a lot of negativity and crazy stuff that's going on in the world, but in terms of what we have in front of us is baseline. There are a lot of us, I'm in Los Angeles right now, and so I am self-isolating, and we're ordered to stay in our homes. And all I can do is make the most of this situation. And yeah, I spent a little bit of time like watching movies, playing games, and just browsing the web. But for myself, I know I want more than just to browse the internet for for however long this period of time lasts. And so I would encourage you, I want you to know that this period of time can be life-changing for you, that you can find internal peace in a world of external chaos. The long-winded answer to the question of what should I do with an eating disorder during coronavirus. I really hope that these things have been helpful for you, though. I am honestly so happy to be making this video. I'm so happy to start plugging back into the community. If you have any questions for me specifically, hit me up in the comments down below. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. I really try to get back to everyone as much as I can. It can be a little difficult sometimes, but hey, I have more time during this period of time. So hit me up on Instagram as well and leave a comment down below. If you have any other questions about eating disorders or anything else at all, let me know. I don't want you to be overwhelmed, feeling like you have to do all these all at one time, because you don't. Start with one. Pick one of these things and roll with that, all right? Stay safe out there, wash your hands, and let's crush this thing together, all right? I'll see you in the next video.